Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. You're watching a special segment on Notepad called The Economics of Elections. Here we cover some of the topics that engulfs the whole realm of economics within the context of politics. And this is quite timely because very recently we've heard some announcements coming in from Pakatan Nasional in terms of their candidates. And of course, Barisan Nasional will be announcing their candidates very, very soon. We've seen Pakatan Harapan announcing a lot of their candidates. In fact, all of them, at least on the parliamentary level, have announced as well. So generally speaking, all is set for the November 5th nomination day. Now, let's talk a little bit more in terms of how this is going to impact or shape our economic policies. On the line right now, joining us all the way from Massachusetts in Harvard University is none other than our good friend at Astro AWANI, Professor Tan Sri Datuk Sri Dr. Nur Azlan Ghazali. Prof. Azlan, how are you and how are you enjoying Harvard right now?
Alhamdulillah, okay. Getting colder now.
Fantastic. And of course, even though you are half of the world away, you are keenly monitoring and observing some of the developments here in Malaysia. I want to take, I guess, a helicopter view of what you think should be discussed amongst the political arenas right now, at the ceramah, at these rallies. Do you get a vibe or feeling that our candidates right now are not necessarily talking so much about the preciseness of the economic policies that they want to take? Or do you feel that some of the details have been touched by some of these candidates? However, it is poorly fleshed out in terms of the policies they intend to cover if and when they win the elections later.
Thank you, Ibrahim. I'm far, but I've been following the subject very closely, and I regularly posted things on my Facebook and so on. Up till now, my score is zero still. No one is talking about economics. I'm not hearing anyone make it very specific in what way they want to tackle some of the economic problem that we are having. And it's blur for all. I mean, other than probably we have some budget was a table just before the announcements of the election, but still, even then, that was a bit left out for now. So I'm looking forward to hear more. I mean, we know that manifesto will be announced very soon, but my wish is, of course, more discussion should already be on the ground by now.
You can wait with bated breath to hear more, but I don't think that many of these details are going to come out. Say, for instance, Pakatan, for instance, they did announce a comprehensive election plan through their manifesto in the previous GE. However, after 2 years taking office, they said that some of the manifestos that they want to do was over ambitious and they couldn't execute. Meanwhile, Pakatan Nasional, as you rightly pointed out, will be announcing their manifesto very soon. However, they do not make their plans clear, but they do mention that economics is going to be a key point. And of course, Barisan Nasional will continue on with their status quo in terms of how they manage their economic policies. Generally speaking, Prof, many of these candidates realize that economy is going to be a big problem in terms of or big topic for the day, but they don't seem to, I guess, present clear details on it. Why do you think this is the case? Is it because they
Well,
lack the
probably,
commitment?
if you compare the election, the 14th election before this, last 5 years, the last 3 years the last 5 years almost, economic performance basically belongs to all of them, right? We have three prime minister. We have all of them had a chance of managing the country, and therefore it is hard to say that who is actually supposed to take the blame. I mean, before it was almost like someone says that all the 30 years plus, 60 years plus is all belong to Barisan. But for now, who's supposed to be blamed, or who's supposed to take the responsibility? What we know is only one, is that some of the economic parameters that were raised very strongly back in PRU 14, PRU 14 is getting worse. You
Yeah.
remember that when we talked those days, I mean 5 years ago, everybody talked about the nation to be bankrupt with a debt of about 600 plus billion, and now our debt is reaching a trillion. So meaning that, I mean, I remember very well because the discussion on economic was very strong in PRU 14. every day you are hearing about mismanagement of economy, the fact that economy is dwindling, no much investment and so on. But this time it looks like everybody is silent on that. But my guess is that because no one want to claim that they are the source of the problem, because all of them were in charge of the nation for the last 5 years.
Prof, Malaysia's household debt to GDP ratio is 89% as at end of 2021. This is down from a record of 93.2% a year ago. And of course, the numbers don't look too good this year. We're looking at the GDP forecasting to be anywhere between 6 to 8% this year. That could lead to a high inflation rate. How do you see the issue of household debt to GDP ratio being managed, and how do you see inflation rate right now being managed?
Across all economic parameters, including finance parameters, generally, what I can say is that things deteriorated over since if you compare for the last 4 or 5 years.
Mm.
Pretty much, we must also accept the fact that in 2020 and 2021, we are struggling with the pandemic. So pandemic, I mean, to me, I mean, because I was in charge of the as a executive director for the Economic Action Council Secretariat. Then I was there in the center of dealing with the problems. My conclusion is that if you segregated, basically you take out the pandemic issues, the rest of the problems that we are facing is already there. You mentioned about high household debt. Was it high before this? It is high. Is it getting higher? You are talking about food security. Is it a problem before this? Yes, we do face these problems. I mean, issue of unemployment, issue of very high youth unemployment. It was there. I think with or without pandemic, we cannot blame all to the pandemic. You know, a pandemic is over, but again, all these problems are structural problems. You know, all these problems are something has been there for more than 10 years. Sorry to say, not much has been attended successfully, and the new government will definitely, to me, among the first challenges they will face is that with all these structural issues, and we all know that the global economy is going to be bad for 2023. So
Okay.
please remember that, you know, I mean, 2023 will be bad years. The whole economy, one third of the world economy will be facing an economic downturn. And so where are the source of growth for Malaysia? That will be a real challenge for those who are winning the election.
Prof, sticking with inflation, because the inflationary pressures data has just been announced by MIDF, has been regurgitated by MIDF research following DOSM's data. It shows that inflation in Malaysia is in danger of moving from specific price rises, says, for instance, food, transportation, which is not formally inflation, I suppose, to a general rise in prices, perhaps due to bad policy or non-policy to management in terms of inflation. Do you see this as the key concern moving forward? Do you feel that the ability for the government to address inflation is very, very important? And perhaps, do you think that the subsidy program, for instance, has to continue on despite it reaching record levels, perhaps even 100 billion this year?
It was formally, officially announced by the government a few months back that if there is no subsidy, the true information is about 11.4%. You know, let us all understand that we are not facing the real situation. And the
Wow.
price for that, the price to see lower inflation rate is almost 80 billion ringgit has to be pumped in the form of subsidy. Tunku Zafrul, then was the Minister of Finance, mentioned that, you know, 80 billion ringgit is equal to the emoluments of the entire civil workforce, the army, the teachers, myself, as a faculty members at the universities, everyone. So we spend that amount of money just for that particular year to try our best to keep the price lower. Even then, Ibrahim, if you look carefully, what matters to the people on the ground, it's not the overall inflation rate. Overall inflation rate is an average of everything.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is the component is actually the food.
Food.
Food inflation. Food inflation is supernormally high. I mean, nearly reaching about 7%. And with the prolonged war crisis, energy crisis, and so on, uh, uh, this has to be on the highest list of how do we attend this, because the group that were badly hit by these are basically the lower income group, and they are the voters. Voters should ask this, all the candidates, what that you will do in order to make my life better. I think this subject has yet to be at the forefront of the discussion for Malaysia. And on top of that, the depreciation of ringgit. Yes, everybody says that it's because of the Fed rising interest rates, but still, whatever it is, the repercussion is on us. Ringgit now is at around 4.7. You can't ever imagine that. You just, to me, you just can't say that, yeah, it's because of US. I mean, yes, we all know that. But what that will do, because there will be a lot of passing over. I mean, imported goods will be higher. Remember that we import a lot of foods, and this will be passed over to the consumers. So bottom line, the economic situation are very challenging at the moment. I think I would urge. I've been crying and lauding this a lot. To say that all candidates, especially whoever formed the government, the first that we would like to see is that how are you going to manage the economy in the coming year?
Prof, I hate to distill things down this way because it's too complex to make it simplified. But I still have to ask you nonetheless. What would be the three things that you think is important for the future government to address? Is it inflation? Is it rising food cost? Is it labor? Where do you feel the three most important things must be done?
Bottom line is about having a better quality of living. We are not trying to make everybody become millionaires here. I mean, it's very important.
Having said that, why not, Prof?
Why not? But of course, we can't do it, right? But bottom line is that it's about income. At the moment, our income, all the gains that we are seeing are very skewed. My concern is that a larger portion of the society, in my calculation, almost more than, in some states, more than half of the population are not really benefiting from the growth. Sorry to say this. I mean, that's why we need to go inside the box. We can announce the increase in national median income, but if you go state by state, district by district, then you start to see problems. So number one is income, definitely. And number two is about jobs. I have serious concern about job creation in Malaysia. I mean, on average, if you look at 2018 and 2019, on average, there are about 100,000 new jobs are created. But for the last 2 years, it's only about 70 to 60,000. And how many graduates that we are producing? I mean, just look at the graduates alone. There are about 300,000 entering the market every year. So there you start to see the problem with the influx of foreign workforce, pushing the wages down and so on. So that really causes a lot of pain. I mean, those with higher degree have to go getting underemployed by skill. But the challenge is that those at the lower end, they will be pushed out. So these are two things that are very important, and definitely the other one is about how can we make sure Malaysia's competitiveness basically we regain back. I have serious concern about that because Ibrahim, I'm here, I'm interacting with a lot of scholars, global people who are looking into every part of the world. I'm sorry to say that the interest on Malaysian seems declining. Sorry to say that. I mean, I didn't hear much discussion about it. Almost every alternate week, there are discussions about Vietnam at Harvard University now. I mean, no one talks so much about Malaysia and I mean the excitement of economic activities that we're seeing there. And we hope that trying to reposition back Malaysian economy is very critical.
That is consistent with another individual that we interviewed, Aaron Sarma of Scale Up Malaysia. He went to a VC conference in Singapore. It seems like everybody's talking about the good side of Vietnam or the bad side of Vietnam. Everybody's talking about Thailand, Indonesia, and the rest. And nobody is talking about Malaysia. He argues on my show that Malaysia is forgotten or completely absent from investors' minds. Do you feel that this is the vibe that you're getting in your communications in Harvard?
That's what I'm trying to share just now. That the excitement about talking about Malaysia, the directions of our economy, what are we offering, and so on, seems to be faded. I must admit that. I mean, of course, I try to stand up and talk about Malaysia, but I don't see much excitement coming up. So we really need to reposition ourselves. We really need to kind of see what are the dimensions. What is Malaysia? I mean, in fact, before coming here, in the discussion in Malaysia with a lot of economists, Dr. Si Mustafa, and so on, we have a lot of sessions at EAC with the industries, with the corporate players. one of the overall concern that I'm hearing is that what is actually Malaysia's offering? It's not clear. What is actually Malaysia's offering? What we know is that there are a lot of interest by the foreign unskilled workforce to come to the country. I
Mm.
mean, if we have sugar here, you can see ants coming up, right? So what actually that Malaysia has in order to attract investors and also to keep investors who are in Malaysia from leaving the country and so on. So I think our global position is something that we need to address. We need to be very firm about our offerings so that investors all around, including Malaysian investors, are very, attracted and convinced by the directions that we are having.
Okay, we'll go for one short break before we continue on our conversation with Professor Tan Sri Datuk Sri Dr. Nur Azlan. Thanks for staying on with us. This is a special segment during the elections called the Economics of Elections, and our guest joining us online in Harvard University at Boston, Massachusetts is none other than Professor Tan Sri Datuk Sri Dr. Nur Azlan Ghazali. He is the Director for Malaysian Inclusive Development and Advancement Institute. We're talking about some of the key features that needs to be discussed during the campaign and perhaps even inculcated inside the manifesto. But more importantly, how will this translate to policies and actions for the new government when they do take office post-November 19th. Now, we're not talking about politics per se. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of hula baloo in terms of the mudslinging that's constantly happening during the campaign. But the focus right now is on the policies. Everybody's asking for details. And right now, Prof, for instance, we want to know more about how the government, say, for instance, is going to increase revenue. We know that we have an extremely super sharp, narrow tax base. We know for a fact that GST wasn't touched at all during the Budget 2023 presentation by Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul in his presentation a few weeks ago. And of course, we're looking at that whole notion of how the government intends to widen the tax base even further. Do you think that this is even possible to be discussed during the campaign? And will the government reintroduce GST? Should the government reintroduce GST?
You see, we unfortunately, I think the impact of the previous election is so much on us. You know, as I mentioned in the beginning, that in the previous election, the subject of economy become the hype of all politicians, right? And I must say that then we are very concerned as an economist who cares for the country. We are very concerned when such subject is being hijacked by the politicians. Politicians love to make, I can understand, where they're coming from. They want, the ideas of trying to give as much to the public, make it cheap, make it free, and don't tax and so on. These are just unrealistic for the Malaysian economy. I think this is where the challenge is, that we need to make sure that the public at large properly understand that there is nothing free out there. It's either you pay or we pay. Not even the government pay. It's either you pay or we pay. It depends.
No free
that's the
lunch,
only
right,
option.
Prof?
That's the only option you have, right? I consume, I pay, or I consume, we pay. That's all. And again, we are trapped with this mindset that tax is like a robbery by the government. We miss that opportunity. People have to remember that the discussion on GST was started by mid-80s, 1980s. Only, sorry to say, that the government are brave enough to introduce it, and suddenly it was hijacked by the politicians. So explaining economics will be very difficult then. And today we are trapped with that mindset. Everybody thought that, I don't want to pay tax. Tax is bad. Government is bad. Government cannot give me back in the form of, good services and so on. But of course, there are challenges on the side of government, right? Everyone is quoting about Finland. Everyone is quoting about Germany and so on. Their tax rate is very high. Their tax rate is super high compared to Malaysia. But of course, in return, they are getting the benefit of of that tax rate. So in Malaysia, I think there are two sides of the coin. One is that the public must be ready, but at the same time, we need to come up with a system which is fairer for Malaysia today. Malaysia is not in 1970s. Largely the income is a lot higher than before, and we are the very few countries that are still, kind of debating whether we want to go into it or not. So the government has to find a way. I mean, explain to the public that tax rightly. I mean, we cannot trying to be good by giving it free. I mean, that's why when you ask about subsidy, I feel like you need to properly explain to the public. It is not right to spend 80 billion a year just to keep prices lower. I mean, we try to make cheap or low price or free as an offering. That is a disaster. There is nothing free. But of course, you need to redistribute income. You need to make sure that health and education are accessible. But there's nothing free. You don't. I hope. Luckily, so far now, I don't hear anyone trying to make that offering again. I think whoever will do it will have a serious battle to explain to the public. Can you really do it? I mean, so please, I hope that I urge for all politicians, as I mentioned, be the 21st century politicians. I mean, look at the economy rightly, shape up the mind of the public rightly, so that we end up having a government who are able to run the country effectively, and everybody will gain from that. And as you said, that do you know that the difference between government revenue and the operating expenses is almost zero?
Yeah.
I mean, if you cross that level to become negative, in my reading of economy, that is disaster. It means that you have to borrow to eat. That's what it means. I mean, so we don't want that. I mean, at the moment, the current account balance is narrowing to the level that are very concerned to the economies. So we don't want to start saying that government just keep on spending. Spending means great. We have to make sure it is sustainable. We must make sure that it is something that will not penalize us in the long run and so on. So everything has to be measured between short-term and long-term gain. But please do not make economics, how should I say it, more crazy economics to be offered to the public.
Okay, Prof, we have about 1 or 2 minutes left. I just want to get more color in terms of what you mean by a 21st century politician. What will be the 2 or 3 ideas that you want to share with us on the point that you're trying to make here?
Be a 21st century politician.
Yeah, I think time has changed. I mean, data is now available everywhere. The Department of Statistics provide data for all the constituents, all the aduns and so on. I really hope that all the candidates will look into this economic data. Of course, economic is not everything about being representative, but you need to understand in short, I would say, Ibrahim, what I gather here, especially the reason I'm coming here is to look at the different models of how we run the economy. The rule is simple. Local solution, local problems, more micromanagement, more delegated. We want to see growth and ownership of growth by the people in the districts. It's not just Putrajaya. Truthfully, Putrajaya do not know everything. It's time to be less Putrajaya centric, delegate that, and the representative must come up with some offerings to the public, what they want to do, how do they want to create jobs, how do they want to increase the income of their voters and so on. I think that kind of discussion, that kind of commitment pretty much explain what it means by what I'm saying about 21st century member of parliaments or representatives.
Prof, are you going to vote? Are you going to do postal vote all the way from the US?
Yes, I'm clear. So I'm approved. So I will vote from here as a postal voter. So Alhamdulillah. So all set. I'm waiting for the ballot paper to come.
All right, thank you very much. Vote wisely, Prof. That was Professor Tan Sri, Datuk Sri Dr. Nur Azlan Ghazali. He is, of course, the director of MINDA UKM, or the Malaysian Institute of Malaysian Inclusive Development and Advancement Institute. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Catch you in the next one.